Welcome to the second edition of enRoute Passport, Canada's premier travel webinar series. I'm Raymond Gerard, Chief Client Officer at Bookmark, publisher of Air Canada's enRoute magazine, and I'm very excited to introduce today's truly tasty topic, How We Eat Now, Canada's Changing Food Scene. Food is a topic that's dear to our hearts here at Air Canada's enRoute magazine, and it has been since 2002 when we first sent a lone, anonymous restaurant critic across Canada to report back on the best dining spots to open that year, which we then share with our readers in our critically acclaimed Canada's Best New Restaurants feature. For obvious reasons, that didn't happen this year, but something else did. While 2020 has been an incredibly challenging year, understatement, for anyone working in the food and beverage industry, it has also revealed just how resilient and creative our country's small businesses can be. In fact, to be a grower, producer, chef, restaurateur is to be a visionary, an artist, and, well, a bit of a maverick at the very best of times, now more than ever. And that's what we're exploring here today and celebrating as well. Our panel is an inspiring cross-section of the creativity that's alive and well in Canada's food scene. They are Nancy Matsumoto. Nancy is a writer and editor who covers food, drink, agriculture, and the environment. In 2018 and 19, she served as enRoute's restaurant critic for Canada's Best New Restaurants, and she is currently co-writing a book on the culture of the Japanese craft beverage sake, which is slated to be published in 2022. Veronica Rivera is one of the most respected sommeliers in Canada and abroad with over 30 years of experience. She's won tons of awards, including Canada's Best Sommelier competition twice, Wine Woman Award 2007 in Paris, and Best Sommelier of the Americas in 2012. A talented speaker and writer with an infectious enthusiasm about sharing the great pleasures of wine, she also holds the title of Air Canada's official sommelier. Eden Hagos is a celebrated host, food writer, and founder of the media and events company, Black Foodie. She's an Ethiopian Canadian with a passion for African and Caribbean cuisine and hosts unique food events and tours throughout all of Toronto. Her work and notable mentions have appeared in Chatelaine, Essence, The Globe and Mail, Toronto Star, the CBC, to name but just a few. Ned Bell is a well-known Canadian culinary talent who has forged a path as a chef advocate, keynote speaker, educator, and now owner and chef at Narrimata Inn. As one of Canada's leading chefs, he's used his voice, outgoing personality, and indomitable spirit to stand up for the world's oceans, lakes, and rivers. In September, Bell joined the table at the United Nations headquarters in New York to discuss Chefs for Oceans platform, which advocates for responsible seafood choices and the importance of supporting a healthy planet. So now, without further ado, let the conversation about food and our food culture begin.
Before we jump into the questions, I just wanted to note that I'll be directing individual questions to individual panelists, but if at any point any of you other panelists want to jump in, please do. We'd love to just have an open and free-flowing conversation here. So I know this panel is mostly about how we're eating now, during and after the pandemic, but I thought we'd start by taking a nostalgic look back to those pre-pandemic times. And so I want to ask you if each of you can describe the best meal you've had in Canada. Where was it and what made it so special? So let's see, Ned, maybe we'll start with you.
Oh my gosh, what a question. Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome. I'm excited to be here. And the best meal I have ever had. There has been so many in this extraordinary country. You know, of course, we're so fortunate to have diversity of flavor, diversity of culture from coast to coast to coast. And, you know, when I think about the Southern Canadians, where most of us live, it often makes me recently think about the Northern Canadians and some of the wonderful experiences I've had up north. And a number of years ago, I was actually very fortunate to take a journey across the top of this country. And one of the stops we made was in Iqaluit. And of course, for those of you who haven't been to Iqaluit before, it is a wonderful place, although it feels a little bit like you're on the moon, truthfully. But you know, the the experience we had, we were cooking in a community kitchen there. We were about to feed the village, and just before we were about to feed the village, an Inuit hunter came in the back door with a freshly killed ring seal. And for a boy from the Okanagan, raised on the West Coast, you know, having only ever seen those types of things in photos and or you know, on documentaries and things, it was quite surreal. And so he proceeded to take this ring seal and feed us in the kitchen. Of course, all the offal goes to the elders in the community, and we got to taste some fresh ring seal for the first time in my life, and it was a flavor that lingered, and it was a flavor that that I will never soon forget. It was extraordinary.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. Eden, how about you?
So my favorite food experiences definitely like tie back to my trips to Montreal. I love visiting and, you know, flying over to Quebec, and there's such a diverse community there, especially within the Black community. So there are lots of really awesome Haitian restaurants, but one of my favorite restaurants is Akwaba. It is owned by a chef from Ivory Coast who lived in Greece for like quite a while before moving to Canada. And so he just like fused those flavors together and did Pan-African cuisine with like a Greek twist. It was really, really unexpected, but it was so delicious. And it was one of those like mom and pop restaurants that you just won't find anywhere else and will treat you like your family. So I always remember those moments.
That sounds amazing. So it's called Akwaba.
Yes.
And can you tell us what part of Montreal it's in?
I should be able to tell you that, but I took an Uber and I.
Okay, we can look it up.
But it was centrally located, yes.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So Akwaba, we'll remember that. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Eden. And Veronique.
Hi there, everyone. So happy to be here. I loved hearing that from Eden. I didn't even know, I'm from Quebec, from Gatineau, not Montreal, but I didn't even know Akwaba. So just goes to show how rich our food culture is in terms of restaurants. Truly endorse that. I've had so many meals in so many great restaurants. We have an amazing restaurant industry throughout the country. But asking what the best one is a little bit like asking me which is my favorite wine. It's a very difficult question to answer, right? So many beautiful moments and different experiences. But one that just came back to mind very quickly was for the beauty and the simplicity of it was we were with a bunch of friends, wine people in out east, visiting some wineries, but also visited some friends in New Brunswick. And we were going to visit the oyster farm from the Mallette family in Chipagan, New Brunswick. And when we arrived there, right, everybody was set with rubber boots and raincoats because we were out to visit the oyster farm and going out on boats. But when we arrived in this, basically what looked a little bit like a warehouse, they had these tables sprawled out with just an enormous bounty of fresh seafood, oysters, of course, but lobster and clams and scallops and couteau. I don't know how you call those in English. You know, the very thin mollusk.
Oh, okay.
The long one. We call it a knife in French, a couteau, because it's so. Anyhow, and those were just all freshly fished and put out there, just raw or barely steam, just tasting of the sea. That just makes you realize, right, the richness of our oceans, our rivers, and our country, everything that we have here, that and the simplicity of it, of you know, the people that were there in a very, you know, to us it was not planned, obviously. They planned it, they fished it, but you know, just the people there, the freshness of the seafood being there in that environment. And of course they were serving us some wonderful Nova Scotia wines with it, which are you know, we often talk about local wine and food matching a wine and foods from the same place. And that definitely holds true for the wines of Nova Scotia. They are fabulous to go with all of our great seafood.
I had no idea there was a great Nova Scotia wine industry. That's amazing. Can you give a shout out to maybe like one or two wineries that you really like there?
Oh, there's so many of them. Now I'm going to be afraid of missing out. But I'm a big fan of bubbles, of sparkling wines, which is something I think should become a bit of our, it's something all four wine producing provinces do very well. It should become a bit of a flagship for the Canadian wine industry, and we'll get there, I think. Nova Scotia makes some great sparkling wines. Benjamin Bridge is one of the very well-known wineries there. They work organically and biodynamically. L'Acadie vineyards were among the very first. But there's not that many. There's about 20 wineries, but the quality level is very high, and that is surprising that they have such a reputation with such a small number of wineries. Speaks a lot to the quality of the wines they make.
Ned, COVID-19 has completely upended the restaurant industry, and yet here you are opening not only a fine dining restaurant, but a whole inn in a somewhat remote location of Canada. So I'm wondering if you can talk about what some of the biggest challenges were, and also maybe some unexpected silver linings.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I appreciate the question. You know, we here at the Narrimata Inn have had quite the journey, as so many of my fellow Canadians and fellow restaurateurs have experienced over the last, 6 or 7 or 8 months, as we look ahead into the next, 18 months and what recovery continues to look like. If you're fortunate enough to look ahead to recovery, my heart goes out to a lot of my peers who are really struggling in our industry right now. And, we feel very fortunate. The universe has taken care of my family recently. And certainly, as we have experienced over the last number of months, we have this really unique place in this really unique place. The Narrimata Inn is a 112-year-old house in the middle of a little tiny magical village, about 4 hours away by car from Vancouver, a short sort of 45-minute flight from Calgary or Vancouver, in the middle of the Okanagan region, the Okanagan Valley. I was actually fortunate enough to be born here, about almost 5 decades ago. And so coming back home has been quite an extraordinary experience. But my wife, my partner, and then 2 of our other business partners, Paul and Maria Hollins, they, have really enabled us, we as a foursome have enabled each other, I guess, to forge ahead, having a support network, a team of people that have been committed to the future has really enabled us to make some great decisions, none of which were easy, all of which were expensive, all of which were wrought with risk. We definitely, took a leap of faith and believed that, if you build it, they will come. We were very fortunate to have this wonderful place. That was a draw. And I think then, by making it delicious, by celebrating not only the British Columbia wine industry and its, 4 decades of history, but also the farmers, the fishers, the artisans, and of course the tree fruit industry that has been here for so many decades. We have had a really great summer. I think inherently kind of are in a bit of a bubble, and so that has helped us. We acquired the inn after a 2-year mission on February 21st. And truthfully, I have a mask around my neck this morning. That was just part of our uniform when we hired all of our staff. So, the quote unquote new normal that we're all facing, with the recommendations and regulations put forth by our health professionals from coast to coast have really, just highlighted an industry that inherently already is highly regulated and very safe to begin with. The restaurant business, has decades and decades and decades of a real focus on health and safety. And so, for us here in Narrimata, we opened with a leap of faith, and the community has supported us. And so, we're very fortunate. We're excited about the future. It has been challenging for sure. It is, the restaurant business is challenging to begin with, no matter where you open, no matter when you open. But certainly for us, we've had a good summer, and we thank the universe.
Wonderful, thank you. I know you told me so many amazing stories when I interviewed you for this food issue, One of the ones that I really loved was about the apricots and how you had that giant bumper crop from someone, I think, growing right near you. Maybe you can just share that one.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you know, here in Narrimata, we're famous for the tree fruit industry. You know, we're about 20 minutes from Penticton. We're in the South Okanagan. There's, you know, dozens of wineries within a few minutes of us as you drive the Narrimata Wine Trail. But about 6 minutes from us is a 400-acre organic apricot orchard. And it's just this wonderful little place that's kind of in the middle of nowhere that's managed by a few homesteaders who have been there for a number of decades. It's on this 100-acre plot of land overlooking Lake Okanagan. You know, I'm pretty sure I've seen Ogopogo swimming by a few times. So for those of you who don't know, Ogopogo is our Loch Ness monster here in the Okanagan. And as a child, learning how to water ski, it made me a better water skier because I never wanted to fall because I didn't want Ogopogo tickling my toes. But the organic apricots here, not unlike the peaches and the apples and obviously the grapes and all the other vegetables and bounty that is here, just makes my food that much more delicious and really gives it a unique taste of place.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. Eden, the next question's for you. You really broke out into the mainstream before the COVID-19 pandemic hit. And I'm wondering, when you started your online platform, Black Foodie, what did you discover about the Toronto and Canada Black food scene? Maybe you can tell us what was going on that just wasn't being seen by the mainstream food world.
Yeah, so well, I think I just discovered how diverse it is. So, you know, I think when folks hear Black foodie, they might not think about all the different ways in which, you know, Black people have immigrated to Canada or have been in Canada. And so like there's all this amazing Caribbean cuisine that you find. And then there are folks that have come in from the US that have like Southern barbecue spots in Toronto that are incredible. Or, you know, I'm Ethiopian and my family opened like one of the first Ethiopian restaurants in Windsor in the 90s. And like, as I started to look into, you know, content and creating these stories on Black Foodie, I started to learn all of these awesome stories from Black restaurant owners. I definitely think that they've been here, but they haven't necessarily been put on mainstream, you know, media outlets. And now there's this turning point happening where people are starting to think deeper and, you know, go outside of the box and try these places out.
I think that's so true. Like, even if you just think about the Caravana Festival, huge Caribbean festival every year. I mean, gigantic, right? And yet it's kind of considered like not part of the mainstream. And most of us don't really know about where people are going to eat or what the customs around it are. So it's really exciting that you have this platform now and are really kind of bringing all these things to a much more mainstream audience.
Thank you. I wanted to mention, well, if folks are interested, like this week is Black Foodie Week. So it's the first ever in Toronto where we're just really celebrating and showcasing Black restaurants across the city, and giving people an introduction so they'll feel more confident the next time they order from a restaurant or, you know, delivery app, and support a business in that way. But yeah, there's so much to learn and so much to discover.
Yeah, and thank you for really spotlighting all of this. It's really exciting. Veronique, you focus on organic and biodynamic wines. Can you tell us a little bit about how the vineyards and the vignerons you source from have weathered the crisis?
Well, it's just like Ned was saying for the restaurant industry, right? It depends on if there's not the same scenario for everyone, right? Depending on where you are and what type of business and you know, the great chance that the Narrimata Inn has is to be in Narrimata and in the Okanagan. I think a lot of things we've seen from this and also affected the wine industry was, of course, much more local tourism. And we're not doing too bad at Soif either, because we were not, even though we're in an urban center. We're more of a destination. We weren't dependent on city workers. Some people, right, that are in downtowns and dependent on you know, the working population in city centers are really, really hurting. Those that are in you know, places where you know, where you go as a tourist, are doing much better. And I'll come back to that, but we've seen it in the wine industry too. So at the beginning of the crisis, of course, we have to remember, right, the world is two hemispheres. It doesn't happen at the same time. It hit the Southern Hemisphere winemakers right in the middle of harvest. And there also, it depends on many things. One of the things that it really highlighted, right, was our reliance on, remember that wine is an agricultural product, and our agriculture depends heavily on migrant workers for harvests, for work in the fields and the vineyards. So that was the trickiest part for the bigger wineries that do depend on migrant workers. Yeah, a huge shortage of labor at one point. But overall, I mean, you know, think of a vineyard. It's not in a city center. It's not highly populated. It's usually in areas, right, more remote. They're large, you know, so a lot of people could actually go on with the work in the vineyard. The small operations, of course, a lot of those that we work with, smaller wineries, are very often family operations. So you have 4 or 5 people working and keeping their distances, and that's fine. We're seeing the harvest now in our hemisphere, and at least for those in the Northern Hemisphere, they've had the chance to, you know, have a few months of experience of dealing with this and knowing what to do. And I was seeing one of our wineries we love to work with in Quebec. They're just assigning sécateur, what you use to cut the grape bunches for harvest, right? Usually, so everybody has their own and they're identified and they don't share equipment and things like that, right? Mm-hmm. It's not, they haven't been hit too hard. There was a huge problem. And then again, that's where we realize the interconnectedness of everybody, you know, and how everything, you know, there's so many ramifications to, a winery could still have lots of wine to sell, but then there was no way of shipping it. There's no way to get transportation. Right. There was South Africa basically shut down their exports for quite a long time. And I think even twice. So that was drastic. The South African winemakers really hurt from that. They did have the wines, they just could. But then a lot of people realize, okay, if those who had a cellar door who could sell from the winery, same thing as is happening in the Okanagan, or more local tourism. So their cellar door sales exploded where they weren't that big before, right? So it's kind of finding, again, a new reality or adapting to different circumstances. But in terms of, you know, growing the grapes, looking after the vineyards, making the wine, the business kind of went on more or less as usual, right? We should not be fearing a big wine glut. There will be enough wine. And we have seen the sales also of people have been, sales have not gone down. Even though the restaurants were shut down for, you know, up to 3 months, people were staying at home, were eating at home.
People really needed it.
They needed it. And I love that whole movement of how it's brought people to, you know, be more aware of what's going on in their own backyard, of traveling regionally, locally, eating and drinking locally. Those are all great things that came out of it, right? I mean, right? There's always a silver lining.
Yeah, really just discovering what's in your own backyard. My husband and I have done a lot of that during the pandemic, and it's been incredibly fun, places that we wouldn't normally go to. I had a couple of follow-up questions. One was going back to the migrant workers, not having enough staff. Was that because they were getting sick or because they weren't being let into the country?
Because they weren't being let into the country because of all of the health measures, of the quarantines. Look at what happened in a lot of bigger agricultural operations. there's been huge eclosions within, you know, the migrant worker community because of how, and it also brings a lot of, you know, we talk about sustainability, but not only in terms of growing our produce, but in our labor practices also. Right?
Yeah, there's been such a high rate of illness too in the migrant farm worker community. So
yeah.
that's a real concern.
And we could apply that to the restaurant industry too. I know I have been reflecting nonstop on our industry that is, you know, far from perfect, and how we can improve it. And again, through the crisis, it has allowed us to realize, you know, or maybe move quicker on certain things. But there's a lot of unsustainable things in our industry. You know, let's just talk about, you know, minimum wages for restaurant workers who've been hardly hit. So a lot of things to think about, and hopefully that we will all come out of it better. I'm just hoping we're not going to forget too quick, because we tend to forget very quickly.
Yeah, I think that's one of the real exciting things, is the ability to sort of tear everything down and rebuild it from the ground up in a more fair and equitable way, which I think would be fantastic. Just one last question about Soif, because I've heard it's fantastic. Your wine bar in Gatineau, is that right?
That's it.
So you said you weren't that hard hit, but did you have a lot of outdoor seating, or how did you handle that?
We weren't that hard hit. I'm always the positive.
Yeah.
I'll always see the glass half full.
You seem very upbeat.
But we have to, right? It's a difficult industry. You have to do it. And I just hear Ned talking. I say, okay, of course they're successful because it's fed by passion. If you get into the business for the money, it's not going to happen, right? It has to be, because it is difficult. So of course we were hit. But we were lucky in many ways. As I guess Ned was lucky to be in Narrimata, we were lucky to have a big patio. But I mean, kudos to, you know, our authorities who were very quick with help measures and all that. And a lot of the cities that allowed restaurants to, you know, improvise patios, close down streets to traffic, to let restaurants put tables outside. It really made a huge difference getting us through the first few months of reopening. Patio season is coming to an end. So the next few months are going to be a big, it's going to be a big reality check for a lot of people, but I'm happy to say our people are coming out. It's nice to see, and that's where you realize that people need this. We need to, we don't only need to eat, but we need to be together. We need to share meals, right?
Absolutely.
And it's nice to see that people are coming out.
Yeah, and I know, Ned, you have a lot of outdoor seating too at Narrimata, and I'm sure that's been great during the and I don't think, can you seat people outside year round there? I'm not sure.
I wish. We do have lots of outdoor verandas and seating. It's an acre property where the inn sits on, and we're right on the edge of the lake here. So we have quite an extraordinary place. You know, it gets cold and dark up here, not unlike you know, lots of other regions.
Yeah, I've never been in the winter.
Yeah, I mean, to admit, I'm nervous of the fall. I am. I'm unsure, and I don't like feeling that way. It's difficult for me, you know, maybe for the first time in my career, I have felt a real responsibility to my coworkers. You know, they are my family. They've helped me lift off this extraordinary thing. Of course, they're not my actual family, and I don't want to use that term lightly, but, you know, I feel a responsibility to keep them at 40 hours a week. I feel a responsibility to, you know, keep enabling them to pay their bills. And, you know, we have been very fortunate as a business, but we have laid out an extraordinary investment. And, you know, basically, you know, I am a very, very much an optimist, but, you know, we spent next year's money this year. And so that for us was a leap of faith. I'm lucky that my two partners and my wife and I had, you know, as a collective have made those decisions. But I'm cautious going into it, you know, prepared. But, you know, we in British Columbia have had a decent run over the last number of months, but, you know, things are spiking again, and I'm really nervous about what the next 3 or 4 months will bring. So I'm just, you know, again, I believe in the universe. You know, we've had some health issues within my family, and the universe took very good care of us, and so I want to make sure that that we continue to thank the Almighty Mother Nature for what she continues to give us, and we can only do our best every day we show up to work, and we strive for for excellence, and I know that I used to say when I would be a young cook, at about 5 p.m. you would feel this like tension come across the industry from coast to coast to coast, because it was just as the game was about to start, the game being dinner service was about to begin, and you could feel all the sommeliers and restaurant workers at the same time, along with chefs and cooks and stewards and custodians and all of the teams kind of ready for battle. And I feel like that sense kind of exists every single day, every single hour. So I look forward to a little less stress, to be quite honest.
Thank you for being so incredibly honest. I felt like that was like one of the most true insights into the industry. And then your description of like getting ready for service, that tension. I just feel like I can feel the weight on your shoulders of, taking care of the staff and your family and, making excellent food. That's just a lot to bear on your shoulders.
I share it with many people, but it is a responsibility that we as an industry have. Is we employ tens of thousands of people from coast to coast to coast, and we need support from the consumers, but we also need to keep pushing ourselves. And so there's a balance there somewhere.
Right. So I'm going to move ahead to sort of imagining the post-COVID future. And I'm wondering if each of you can paint us a picture of what you think the food and beverage landscape is going to look like. What will be the same? What will be different? And related to that, how can we bring back the diversity of restaurants that we used to have before the pandemic? So Eden, maybe we'll start with you.
Sure. So, I mean, I definitely see the future of, the restaurant scene in Canada as being more diverse. I hope that during COVID, there was a huge social justice movement. There was this huge push towards recognizing the fact that, racism exists not only in the US, but across the board around the world, and it happens in Canada. And it that has effects in the restaurant industry as well. It affects whether, somebody can get the business loan that they need to open up their restaurant. It affects whether they're going to be even able to rent a place. I had a panel discussion yesterday where a really well-known restaurateur was telling us how the local community lobbied against him, essentially. They didn't want Black folks eating there. And this is in Toronto. So these things have been happening. And I think right now, what I hope to see in the future is that we see more folks given a chance to succeed and to bring in their amazing food and create jobs for people in their community. I also think, I hope too that, we see changes in the way that people that work within the restaurant industry, not just the people who are the restaurants and owners and the chefs, the famous chefs, that they're treated better and they're paid fairly for their labor. I think we're seeing now Canadians be more conscious of the fact that it doesn't have to be this way. You don't have to exploit someone in order to have a good experience or have a successful business. If anything, that's not a successful business. So that's what I hope to see. I might just be being really optimistic, but those are some of the changes I hope to see.
Yeah, that would all be great. It makes me sad to hear the story about the Toronto restaurateur and not being welcomed in his community. And yeah, I feel like there are two opposing things. One is this incredible Black Lives Matter and recognition that people need to be more in the spotlight who haven't been. But then also thinking post-COVID, there's going to be a shortage of capital. It's going to be hard for everyone. So how that shakes out is going to be really interesting. Veronique, maybe you can address this question.
Well, I mean, it's as Ned said, there's so much uncertainty, right? I think that's our new reality is never knowing exactly, but definitely have some wishes of as I said, coming out a better, stronger, fairer industry. Um, Ever since I've had SWAF, I've always said, I wish I could pay my employees better. The model of the restaurant business for now does not allow it, right? We employ a lot of people at minimum wage that depend largely on tips for that whole question of, right, the tipping system.
Yeah.
Still very debated, but I definitely think we should take a hard look at, I love this industry. I really, really do. I think everybody here is in it because we love it. But it breaks my heart to see how a lot of our employees are treated in this industry. And the crisis has definitely revealed the fragility of their living, right? So I really hope, everybody's talking about, we talked a lot about local. People want to eat more local, want to eat better, want to have a more sustainable, but you have to be ready to pay for it. You cannot ask for the best produce in the world, the best artisans to prepare it for you, and then want to pay fast food prices. So that's also something we have to look at collectively, right? I find it sad that the restaurant industry represents such a great cultural asset across the country. Everybody loves the restaurants, the great food that we produce, the great chefs that prepare it for us. And yet it's such a fragile industry, right? It's glorified in one way, but on the other hand, it doesn't have really the means to survive. I mean, a lot of questions again, but my one wish would be that we come out as a more sustainable, fair, more balanced industry that allows, its actors to make a decent living from doing the job they love to do.
Yeah, I hope if anything, this whole pandemic has made people realize that we need to support you and pay, a fair price for amazing work that's being done all across the country. And Ned.
Oh, well, I'm going to take a deep breath here because I have so much to say around this. First of all, fully recognizing the unique and fortunate position that I personally am in my life. Been in the business for 30 years, been washing dishes since I was 14, been cooking for 30 plus years. I was raised in a kitchen, mostly male, mostly white. And for the last number of decades, that's what I've seen. Certainly, that diversity has not existed. And so I have made it my mission over the last 10 years, to participate and attempt to, I don't want to say lead because I don't see myself as a leader in this way, but to promote from within, to promote diversity and equality. My co-chefs, Stacy, Minette, and Lee, and I have gone to a 4-day work week, 4 and 3.
Wow.
We have allowed ourselves to attempt to create quality of life. We don't call our dishwashers. We call them stewards. We don't call it a dish pit. We call it a dish area. And last night for dinner, my steward had steak for his staff meal. So it's all of the little things that add up. It's no different when you're, if you're making wine or when you're making a great dish. It's the small things that make a dish great. And in the kitchen, front of house, or in the rest of the business, we have to continue to recognize how we can impact our people. We don't pay minimum wage because we are in a small village outside of a small town. We have to pay well to attract. It does absolutely impact our profitability, but you know what? I pay a fair price for my harvest and my catch from my farmers and my fishers, and I pass that on to my guests. and I give value on the plate and I charge them for it. And listen, I'm a fortunate chef. I have a brand that enables me to attract a guest, but I opened a business and I wanted to open this business at a certain point. I don't consider us fine dining. I consider us premium execution. And so
that's interesting.
You know, good money on ingredients, whether it's through a community supported fishery, whether it's through only hyper focusing on region and season, as we do here at the Narrimata Inn. Guess what? That costs money. There is no such thing as cheap food. Everything comes at a price. You know, if it's cheap, something, someone, or somewhere has paid the price. And I just don't believe that we can continue to live that way. I think we need to push us as consumers. We need to push against our addiction to cheap in North America. I think it puts unfair pressure on humans around the world to either impact the ecosystem or the species or the place. And I feel a responsibility. You know, at the end of the day, I just cook food. I'm just a cook. I'm a blue collar cook. I just wear a white jacket and be in a very unique place. But at the end of the day, I am a cook and I need to cook delicious food, charge accordingly, pay a fair price, and promote my team through diversity. You know, a really quick comment, you know, there's a big culinary competition going on right now. 15 available spots in that culinary competition, all men. And it was infuriating to see, because to me, that just means not learned any lessons. And, you know, I'm not going to call that culinary competition out, but I can guarantee you won't see me competing in that competition anytime soon, because I have 3 incredibly talented co-chefs in my kitchen who would have loved to compete, and they weren't even given the chance.
Wow,
so it's disappointing that some of my peers didn't ask for a little more diversity, you know, amongst the competition. But, you know, just to go back quickly, pay a fair price, charge accordingly, pay your people well. It is not easy to have a 4 and 3 schedule. You know, it just isn't. But you know what? It's worth the effort. And I think if we're not willing to do it as leaders, how can we expect the next generation to figure that out?
Right. Thank you so much, Ned. I love the analogy of paying attention to detail in the back of the house and your treatment of the staff, the way you would pay, you know, incredible attention to what's going on the plate. I think that's a great way to look at it. So I
consider myself a player coach, you know. I mean, you coach from within. You got to be willing to do all the things. That is the magic of this business. That is the strange addiction of this business. If the dish area needs to be clean, I'll be there first and foremost.
Yeah, thank you. So I have one more general question, and then I'm hoping we might be able to get through a couple other questions before our time is up. So my last question, directed to all of you, is as food and drink business owners, what are the 3 most important tips you give others in your industry for how to survive these strange pandemic times? I know you're not a food and drink business owner, but you know, you can maybe speak to the world that you operate in, Eden, just trying to get more awareness onto Black restaurants and chefs. What kind of tips do you give other people of color who might come to you and say, you know, I want to do something and make a difference too?
Good question. Well, I'm always saying, like, be open-minded, you know, try something new, and ask questions. So for the work that I do on Black Foodie, we really try to demystify things and give people, you know, an introduction to these cuisines, these chefs, these restaurants, these food businesses that they might not have heard of before. And hopefully that gives them a feeling of being better equipped to go and try it, or like they're now enticed because they've seen how delicious it looks. But like the tips that I would have is to, like, you know, there's so many ways to support, like, you know, you're on your social media platform, you might reach 500 people, and that's 500 people that might, you know, go into that restaurant or order takeout from that place. Like you can use your own voice and your own platform to promote places and to support these restaurants and businesses. And then I would say for consumers too, to like challenge mainstream media outlets, you know, make sure that they are representing people that reflect Canada, people that look like all of us, you know what I mean? And not just some of us. So I would say to just be, you know, more conscientious of like their decisions when they're purchasing, you know, from restaurants, but also too in the media that they consume.
Great, fantastic, thank you. Veronique?
So 3 tips I would give generally, as that's a very wide question.
Yeah, sorry.
No, but you know, it's all about, I mentioned, you know, a few times, talked about passion. It has to be a true passion. Let's not kid ourselves. We know everybody who's in this industry. It's hard work. And when you're going to put in all that energy and all that time, it has to be for something you love, right? So doing it for the right reasons, first of all, and then, you know, be willing to put in all that work and not let it be about yourself. It's about everybody else around us. It's about our guests, first and foremost. It's about our suppliers, you know, all those great growers and farmers and winemakers who, you know, make wonderful produce for us. And it's about our employees, right? I've always had a bit of a problem with the whole celebrity kind of status and that we're seeing in this industry. And I love it that, you know, we're putting forward these jobs, you know, celebrating chefs and servers and everybody working in the industry. But we should never lose sight that, you know, it's not about us. And so this whole recognition of workers in the industry is great because it's shown a light on us. It helps us, you know, recruit. It makes the profession maybe more attractive until people realize it's not all about having a TV show and writing a book. It's working in a kitchen or on a restaurant floor is hard work. But promote those values of true hospitality. And again, to stay open, be open-minded, to be as inclusive as possible. We all have habits, you know, bad habits, ways of thinking that are just ingrained, right, culturally and we don't maybe realize that sometimes we are not as inclusive as we should be. There's a lot of reflection to be brought to that, right? But yeah, basically, I mean, hard work, humility, being very humble, and there was something else I was thinking about.
Well, that's great. That's
knowing how to surround yourself. Sorry. Running a restaurant is not one job. It's like 30 jobs in one. Knowing how to surround yourself. Once again, you know, leave the ego at home. Nobody can do everything. Or you will eventually crash or burn out, which we also see too much of. But knowing how to surround yourself with great people and taking care of those people, making sure you share the same values. For me, it's also one of the great joys of having a business is bringing people into this business and offering them sustainable careers, right? Yes. Developing our manpower and just making it possible for people to thrive in this industry.
That's great. Thank you so much. And Ned, I don't think we heard your tips.
3 tips. I have 30. No, I'm kidding.
We only have time for 3.
Yeah. Well, first of all, really quickly, I just want to say how fortunate I am to have my lovely wife by my side. She, you know, is a marketing guru and a PR expert, and so, you know, her ability to tell stories through traditional media, traditional and now social media. The importance of traditional media, of course, is something that I think the next generation needs to be reminded of. And you know, a quick shout out to enRoute and Air Canada for continuing to host things like this, but also, you know, the awards over the last number of years that really, you know, give us in these small places, whether it's an urban center or a small place, a chance to tell our stories and to attract guests into our businesses. You know, we don't survive unless people know about who we are and where we are. You know, as my mentor told me over 3 decades ago when I first walked into his kitchen, the number one thing we are supposed to be doing is serve quality consistently. We have to make sure that we are always striving for excellence and doing it consistently. His name was Michel Jacob, a restaurant called Le Crocodile in Vancouver. I was
a great place. Yeah, I remember it.
There. And Michel is a legend. His restaurant has been and still thriving after 35 years. It's just quite extraordinary. But as I look ahead over the next 18 months, and truthfully in my industry, the next 18 years, I'm one of the lucky ones. I'm the product of a home economics teacher. I get to do what I love. I, feel so lucky that I knew I wanted to be a chef at a young age, and I want to inspire the next generation. And how am I going to do that? Well, I'm going to have fun. I'm going to cook tasty food. I'm going to make sure my kitchens look like the places that I want to be part of. So there's diversity, there's flavor, there's consistency, there's fairness, there's kindness. All of those things that we know are so important at home, they should exist at work. And so for me, I want to be part of that conversation. I don't want to lead it. I just want to participate. But I want to make sure I'm creating opportunity for my co-chefs, for the next generation of my industry. Because, if I'm still cooking in 30 years, it's not necessarily going to be working quite as hard. It is a very hard job, but it is something that is so valued and valuable to feed people. And gosh, do we need the family table right now, the proverbial family?
Yes.
And so, thanks to my panelists, co-panelists today, Veronique and Eden, and of course you, Nancy. I can't wait to look ahead to the future and just work hard. In fact, I got lunch service to get to here pretty quickly.
Yeah, I got to let you go. Well, thank you. That's a great way to close it out. Thank you, Ned. Thanks to you all, Eden, Veronique, Ned, just an amazing discussion. I think one thing we can all take away is how resilient our industry is and how precious it is to our quality of life, as you've all pointed out. And you're all making incredible contributions. So I want to thank you. Just a quick shout out to all in the audience to please support the Canadian food scene any way that you can. Check out organizations like savehospitality.ca. They're working and lobbying to ensure that a thriving restaurant scene emerges from all this pandemic business. Do takeout, do patio dining. I've seen restaurants hauling out the big heat lamps. So let's try to keep that going as long as possible. There are gift cards, merchandise, whatever you can do. I would also like you to check out the annual enRoute food issue, now available online at enRoute.aircanada.ca. So thank you all for joining us on this second edition of Passport, brought to you by Air Canada's enRoute and Bookmark Content and Communications. And please watch for news of our next edition. So bon appétit, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.